Just on that point of the academies and how kind of high-powered their engine has to work to produce all these players, is it producing quality as well as the quantity? Like, I think Jacob Stockdale is a great example to actually analyse this point in, like, would Jacob Stockdale have been an outstanding player regardless of what academy he came through, regardless of what country he came through? Because it seems to me that this is a very, very special talent. Or do we have the IRFU to thank here and say, right, they got the best out of a gem that needed to be polished anyway?
I think Stockdale was going to come through regardless. I saw him at the Under-20s World Cup and he stood out in that game, and it stood out like you would expect a Bowden Barr to stand out at an Under-20 World Cup. He was absolutely incredible. The academies, Tyg Furlong and Marty Moore, when these guys were coming through the academy, they knew there was a shortage of front row stocks, and they just brought guys in, brought them in. And then they eventually, the more you bring in, the higher chance you have of success. Yes, there is a bigger player population and in Dublin and in Leinster, and but that is what it is. So the strategy that works in Dublin can't work in Munster, in Connacht, and in Ulster. And they have to. If you roll out the same formats, you're going to have vastly different results. Where's the investment in underage rugby in Leinster and primarily in Dublin comes from goes into the clubs, and you've got that, and again you have that population density, and that's going to feed up naturally into the private schools and ergo into the academies. That doesn't happen in Munster, where you can go down to Nina and you can are they having the same numbers that Lansdowne have on a Saturday morning? If not, why not? How do they get them? Where's that rural investment? Where are they getting all of these clubs? It is a harder job to be done in Munster, in Connacht, and in Ulster. But that doesn't make it that's not an excuse for it not to be delivering. It just has to be done differently.
And if you put 100 young lads out, stand them outside there in one corner, put 20 over there, you've more options with that 100 for sure to get, if you're picking 10 guys out as opposed to the 20. So the numbers do make a difference, but the system makes a difference as well. My little fella's playing under 8s or under 9s with St. Mary's in school. I went up to St. Michael's 2 weeks ago to watch a game. There's about 15 games going on at one time. Like, it's astronomical.
But that's my point. That is happening
all over the place.
But that's not due to Leinster or due to IRFU. They feed into it when it's organised. But why is that not happening in some iteration in Munster?
They have more threats around the GAA and soccer and all that. I know they still have threats, but it's a numbers game as well, Dart.
You've got to go back to the
in Munster. Make a difference.
Going back to the end point is the academies aren't delivering, so there needs to be an investment at the grassroots level. And if you don't have the investments, you're talking about numbers. If you don't get numbers invested at that stage, you're not going to have an academy system.
What if the numbers just aren't there? I see it when I bring my little fella to his TOTS GA training on a Saturday morning. There are 150 kids there, and that has been replicated across 70 or 80 other clubs in Dublin, that no other county can compete with those kind of numbers. So you're saying that, well, how do you get the numbers up? Well, they just don't exist in the vast majority of places where rugby is played in this country.
But they exist for GAA in other parts of the country. Like, that is a culture that I presume is created over years. That the whole Saturday morning thing. But
I've been blown away by.
You'll have it there. I go down to Wexford every now and then, and they will still have 200 kids. Maybe not 200. They might have 100 kids on a Saturday or Sunday morning, but it's done by Wexford Wanderers. And is there another Tyg Furlong in there? That's not getting the polishing and the nurturing that could bring through.
The point, Darcy, is Wexford Wanderers have 100 kids there. Who else around that area has another 100? Whereas if you go to Dublin, there's 200 in St. Michael's, there's 200 down in St. Michael's. No, I know, absolutely. It is a numbers game. I think the academy, the structures come from the IRFU and the academy. So I always work off this example. With Munster, the replacing Ronan O'Gara, who you played most of your career with Ireland, probably all your career. Ronan was outstanding talent. Where was the replacement? Where was the Joey Carberry? Where was the Paddy Jackson? Where was the Johnny Sexton in Munster coming through to challenge him? He played for 15 years with Munster. There was 6A schools at the time in the province, or 6 or 7 maybe. I stand corrected. So that's 15 years by 7. You know, you're talking about a couple of maybe 100, 150, 200 out halves who played in those schools teams. Not one that I can remember came through with the ability to challenge him. And
Yeah, but
so
sure, you can look at
out of
Leinster as
200
well. I mean, Johnny Sexton was playing
No,
for Leinster
they're
for 9
unique
years
players,
now.
yeah, they're unique
There hasn't
players.
been a single
Yeah,
10 that's
there's
come through the
unique
Leinster
players.
Academy
But
that has been able to challenge him
my
to the point where
is-
he's in danger of losing his place.
My point is, sometimes it can be a bit of luck as well. It can be a number, 5 really talented guys in a certain number of positions come through at the same time. When I played with Munster, some of the players we had, that was nothing to do with academies. That was nothing to do with, it was more to do with the club system that you're saying. And we kind of were unique that we had just a group of guys at a time.
You can't separate the professional game from the club game. And
No, not at all, I agree.
it's painful and it's unpalatable, but if you do not invest in that game, so you're saying there may not be the population, but you can double, you might be able to get more players in if it's invested in it, if the facilities are, not the facilities, but if the coaching is of a higher standard, if it's enjoyable, if it's well run. The one thing you go into Gaelic and you go into GAA, it's GAA and hurling. You go in, you've got ex-players in there and that have played probably inter-county hurling or football, but it's run like clockwork. It's, you know, you go in, kids dropped off, and I see it, and they're just run out. You go into a rural rugby club and it's, you know, 2 people who may not have even played rugby and it's basically a glorified crash. That is not going to produce the next Ronald O'Gara or the next Johnny Sexton to take over that. That investment needs to be put in if you want to create viable academies in the other 3 provinces. You know, and I'm, you know, happy to be wrong in that, but I do think there is an investment, a certain level of investment that needs to go in.